Welcome to the Naturally Prosperous Women podcast. I'm your host, Tara Preston, founder of the Akashic Women's School, mentor to new paradigm leaders for over a decade, and teacher of divine prosperity consciousness. This podcast is dedicated to empowering women leaders around the world who desire to tap into their authentic feminine power for more money, magnetism, and, of course, impact. It's a platform for women leaders wanting to embrace their natural abilities to create, lead, and flow, unlocking their inherent potential for prosperity and living in alignment with their truest selves. Because it's your birthright to flourish in the naturalness of the woman you were born to be. Thanks so much for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, my name's Tara Preston. Welcome to the Naturally Prosperous Women podcast. This is our first episode, and I am so excited to dive in. This podcast rebrand came with a lot of clarity through the spring season. I started feeling this urge to kind of regroup and really pull everything under one umbrella. And so as I started to look at that, and there's been a couple evolutions of this podcast, which have been so delicious. Each and every podcast has had its own flavor with its own medicine and has contributed to my evolution, and I hope your evolution as well. When I started to look at how to regroup, I really started to look at some of the core offers, one being my Akashic Women's Guide Advanced Certification. And the Akashic Women's School. And so just simplifying and getting the core message that really wants to flow through the teachings that I offer, the Akashic Women's School, and how I could kind of solidify that into one really beautiful rebrand, which brought forward the Naturally Prosperous Woman. So I'll be sharing a little bit about, more about that as we go, but today I actually really want to drop into something that's, I feel very important and something that's really kind of near and dear to my heart. I stepped into my sacred work over a decade ago, and at that time I had, my baby girl who was maybe 1 year old. My husband was doing his master's, and I set out on this journey to live my sacred in the world. I really wanted to understand how to bring forward my gifts, how to live a life of purpose, and how to connect money to that in order to experience true freedom, true feminine freedom. So prior to that, I'd been working for as a makeup artist for well over a decade, and I was outgrowing my life in the city and in that profession, and it offered me so many beautiful pieces and clues around my bigger work in the world, which really is holding that space for women to remember, reclaim, and to reawaken to their potential, their power, their liberated expression. And so over the years, I have worked with the Akashic Records. I've really been holding space for women to move through deep soul level transformations as they step into the next level of their freedom, their leadership, and their prosperity. One of the things that I want to talk about with this first episode is really unlocking the first 6 figures in your own purpose-based business as an emerging feminine leader, and how anchoring into the body was actually a key piece for me in doing so. So the reason I mention some of what my background is and my history is because for the first 3 to 5 years, I really stayed at that, making $3,000 to $5,000 a month. There wasn't necessarily anything wrong with that. It's just that I knew that I wanted more, and I was really wanting to I really wanted that feeling of really being anchored in my new paradigm leadership. And so the 6 figures mark to me, really getting my core offers, really getting that consistent income, really feeling expanded in my leadership, and really feeling the visual proof to a degree of what 6 figures could look like and feel like in my experience. And, for many, many years, I took a good 5 years of getting that foundation under me. And so one of the things, there's a few components. I want to talk about what that actually looks like. What does it actually look like to anchor in your 6-figure feminine-led business? So, bringing your essence and your purpose and your gifts into the world and having a business as a vehicle for freedom. So there were, we always have like the systems, the structures, the core offers, like those are very beautiful components and they're needed. We need the actual physical aspect of our business to be that vehicle to hold our expression and to be that vehicle for freedom. But what I often find and what I found was missing in my own journey was being anchored in my body. And there's actually 3 key components to the foundation that's often needed. One of the foundations is the inner foundation, which I talk about a lot. That's like the inner piece is such an important piece to me, having that inner foundation, which really oftentimes is where we're healing a lot of like the woundedness, sometimes the masculine woundedness, sometimes the feminine woundedness. We're really coming into a deeper, more empowered relationship with ourselves. So we have that inner foundation to actually carry us forward. And it's a lot of like where that internal union between the healthy feminine and healthy masculine really start to integrate, which takes us beyond the box of really society. It really starts to allow us to move from a place of freedom, and not being entangled in a lot of the karmic or ancestral or even generational trauma patterns that sometimes keep us, to a degree, playing small. And of course, there's a lot of layers that go with that. But the body became such a core piece. In my own awakening journey, the heart was such a point of access. And, one of my very first businesses was called the Sacred Feminine Path. And it was a core part of my work for probably a good 3-4 years, which really was, supporting women to access the heart, to connect to our desires, to listen to how we're feeling, to heal patterns of overgiving and to understand how to move into receptivity through a deepening of self-love, listening to our needs, right? And often from there, it unlocks our sacred path. It takes us out of obligation and pushing and going and doing, and we start to get clarity over what is my authentic path? Like what is my purpose? What are my gifts? So we unlock a deeper connection to the essence through the gateway of the heart. And that is a really, really important piece. And I cherish the years that I spent doing that work. I still feel so connected to my heart. And the heart is a beautiful wisdom center for accessing our essence. But what often happens, especially for spirited, highly sensitive women, right? And some may kind of term this to be empathic. And I don't necessarily always think that that's a case. I sometimes think that we have some trauma from our childhood that sometimes has allowed us to adapt into feeling like we need to be able to read and adapt to the people around us in order to feel some sense of safety. And that conversation is probably for a whole other podcast. But what I do want to talk about is how the essence wants to descend more fully, where the invitation for the essence, for our feminine essence to descend more fully into the fullness of our feminine vessel. And where so often we sometimes disconnect from that, where we often disconnect from that. And so for me in my business, what I've often found was that I just couldn't get that anchored sense of magnetism. Like I was still feeling a lot of push. I was still feeling really pulled around by just the different pieces in my business, sometimes by clients. I had a reduced amount of capacity when it came to being able to actually hold more money, more clients, when it came to a capacity to actually just even expand and hold more in terms of the vision that I was calling in for myself. So the body became this beautiful piece, and I really had to start to look at like where the disconnect between myself and my body existed. right? Because I wasn't feeling as rooted or as anchored as I maybe knew that I could. And what often happens is that the trauma that we hold at the level of the womb and often the yoni, the feminine root center, can create a disconnect. And that simply happens because of the nature of what it means to be empowered in our feminine essence in our society. So particularly if we think about the womb, we often there can be ancestral trauma there. We can have sexual trauma. There can be numbness. And, to a degree, we really haven't, as women, as young women, been given the tools to understand how to connect to the energetic womb space, how to cleanse, clear, transmute very often the emotions and the stagnation that we can even be holding there. So, on top of that, as we descend more fully, as we descend lower into some of the denser feminine wisdom centers, such as the womb and the feminine root, it takes us deeper into the physical experience. Like we really start to descend into more of what it means to feel some of the trauma that we've held there, or some of the numbness or the disconnect or the grief or the anger that we've held at the level of the womb. So this is a gentle journey that can take time, and yet it is the seat of power for the feminine, right? It's where we begin to drop into an anchored space of presence where life and the world around us starts to orbit around our frequency rather than us feeling pulled around by the world around us. Life starts to orbit around us. And not only that, when we start to really descend into the pelvic bowl, we start to awaken to our primal power, to our natural sensuality. We start to drop into the womb space. We definitely start to feel more anchored and definitely start to awaken the Shakti. We start to really harness a different space of our creational power, where we don't have to push as much and where we can actually use the Shakti, the life force, the creative vitality that exists within the cauldron of the womb space to create life on our terms. So there's a lot of ease, a lot of magnetism, a lot of manifestation power that exists in the sacral. And yet for so many women and women entrepreneurs, it's like we're really not dropped into the power that exists in this place, right? If we think about the capacity that we have to birth life, birth businesses, birth creations, it really enables us to move a lot of energy and to amplify a lot of the resources that we have available to us. So that becomes a really important piece, especially if we want to create a six-figure business, but we're doing so from a place of spaciousness. That's a really important piece for me. I can definitely say that over the years, I have built and held a multiple six-figure business from a true place of sustainability and from a true place of spaciousness, right? Which is really, really important to me. And I find when we start to drop into our values, needs, wants, the vision that we have as women, as sacred women who are being called to live a life of purpose, who are being called to lead from a place of natural power and leadership, when we start to really identify what that is, spaciousness and core values, that often surfaces, right? Connection, spaciousness, feeling nourished, feeling alive. Right. And so how do we get to build our businesses in congruency with our deeper values? Now, I also want to talk about, I'm talking about the body, and I'm talking about the body as a foundation. So what I was saying, oftentimes when I have, feminine entrepreneurs come to me and we're talking about business and we're talking about the business foundation, and they're looking at their business foundation, the physical business foundation. And to me, that's only one piece. Like that's one piece. There's three foundations in business. And that's the inner foundation, the body foundation, because the body is what builds the energetic capacity to hold it all and to do it just naturally. and then the business foundation. And often the business foundation comes into alignment from the deeper inner energetic foundation and the body foundation. But for me, if I go back to, my journey and when I was trying to really sort out like where my missing link was with this landing this six-figure piece. And I come from a background too, where I was making probably before I stepped onto this path, maybe, $50,000 to $60,000 a year. So, not only that, I was, reworking a lot of my prosperity consciousness, and that really had to do with upgrading or healing some of those masculine and feminine templates that I was talking about. But again, and these are things I'm going to be deepening into with this podcast as I go, because these are really important new paradigm feminine leadership and prosperity pieces, right? Stepping into our sovereignty, living beyond the box of society, really being able to drop into our creational power and to really create our lives in deep alignment with our authenticity, our natural leadership, and the vision that lives in our heart. So as I was feeling into my body and my body being this foundation and doing this journey of growing in my anchored power, and if you know my work and primarily, I do focus on a lot around like the feminine and the awakening of the feminine. And so as I started to descend more fully into my body, I started to really pay attention to the womb. I started to pay attention to yoni and the connection to the feminine root, right? The root chakra, what I actually call the rose chakra, where the awakening of the divine feminine starts to happen at the level of the root, clearing out a lot of our ancestral poverty consciousness patterns. But not only that, when we think about the suppression of the feminine and how that affects the wisdom center of yoni, there's a lot of disconnect there for a reason. We also hold a lot of trauma there, right? We've been disconnected from knowing our bodies because of some of the trauma, and some of where it feels like a threat to know our bodies and to be in our sexual power. Right? Sometimes a perceived threat because of past trauma, or just because of some of the imprinting that we've received from society, or just misogyny in general, right? That collective imprinting around what it means to be in our creative sexual power as women. So as I started to look at what it meant to be in my body, I really began this journey of descending more fully, which, by the way, these are all pieces that I journey with you through in the upcoming Fully Awakened Woman, 12 weeks to embodying the power of your turned on frequency. This is such a potent body of work for the feminine leader who's really ready to connect to her feminine power for more money, more magnetism, and really, truly more global impact, right? Being in our bodies, living in the frequency of our yes, right? Allowing our creative sexual energy to awaken, to embrace that power so that we can break free and create powerfully. We can break free. And not only that, experience the joy and the power of being in our bodies. So when I talk about the body, I talk a lot about embodiment, and that's again another episode I could go into. That's, working with women through life transformation for over a decade. It's been soul level transformation. So I have a very deep understanding of what embodiment looks like and feels like in terms of embodying more of our feminine essence and expression, and also embodying more of our divinity. So I'm always weaving in the Akashic Records, weaving in both of those embodiment pieces. And you'll find that in the Fully Awakened Woman. And I'm going to leave the link in the show notes. Today, Wednesday, I think June 7th, will be the final day for the early saving. So if this is speaking to you, jump on in. This is our second year running. And the testimonials, the breakthroughs, just the deep shifts that women had in the container last year were so, so powerful. Now, I want to talk about this, dropping into the fullness of our activated channels of truth and wisdom as women, right? We take our essence from, being disembodied, living in our heads, right? Which is how society, for the most part, has continued to condition us, to dropping into our heart space, to connecting to essence, to bringing our essence, our divine essence, more fully into our body through the womb space. And finally, clearing and healing trauma, numbness, disconnect, right? From the source and center of our creational power and also our pleasure. And bringing essence down into the feminine root so that we can feel fully awake and fully alive in the expanded, embodied experience of our entire feminine energetic system. The feminine energetic system is something that I've coined over the years, really looking at all these different wisdom centers and the journey of our divinity, of our feminine essence, dropping more fully into our bodies, into our female vessel, especially where we often have disconnect due to numbness, separation, trauma, right? And what it means to actually land in the full beauty, power, vitality, radiance, and intelligence of our female bodies, right? When we start to fully descend into our bodies and into the vulva, into the rose chakra, right? Our essence fully lands. She feels safe to land, to ground into this human experience, right? There's a certain element of foundation right there in and of itself. The rose chakra is a very important foundation piece. It's the root. It's such a bridge between the physical aspect and the divine aspect of who we are. If we think about a mother giving birth and the baby crowning and coming earth side, but dropping into this feminine wisdom center and the intelligence that exists in this place also awakens our sensitivity, awakens us to pleasure, awakens us to our creational power. It awakens us to being able to move through the world, connected to our body intelligence, and connected to what turns us on, and also what feels really good. Right? And we start doing business and we start playing in the world in bigger and bigger ways, but very, very rooted in our expanded feminine intelligence, very rooted and anchored in our magnetism. And so in that place, we start to expand in our power. And anytime a woman starts to expand in her power, there's edges to that. There's edges to what it will mean as she shows up in more of her visible expression within that, in the scope of her community, in her leadership, in her relationships, within her family. And so this is, an important piece of the work that I'll often do, supporting women leaders stepping into more of their visible power and expression, because it's so connected to our magnetism. And where the Akashic Records become such a potent soul level clearing tool, which also is woven into the fully awakened woman. But my invitation for you, and I've got a free gift, you can definitely check out the Fully Awakened Woman if that speaks to you. I've got a few actually beautiful free ways to get started if any of this is speaking to you. It can be such a gentle, beautiful journey that can take time, that you can grow with. And that's the nature of my work, is gentle but powerful. I hear it all the time. Gentle but powerful and so transformative. I understand what it means to work with the feminine essence. I've been doing it for 20 years, holding space for women to tap into their authentic beauty, their authentic femininity, and their power. So a couple ways you can get started is if you head over to the Akashic Women's Community Facebook group. I just put together a free series. It's called the Radiant Power Morning Series. And I guide you through, there must be about 9 different tools and practices that I give you over the course of 3 days. We work in the quantum field to activate your beautiful, powerful woman. We look at, one of the tools that I really love is kind of just conscious breathing to open up the feminine energetic system, but also the pussy pulse to just kind of really clear the root, strengthen the root, get the energy moving from the root up, because we want to stop existing from like the busyness of our mind to being really dropped into the beauty of our body, where we start to feel very centered, where we start to feel very on purpose, where we start to flow from a different calibration of energy and intention, right? And we take action, but we're doing it from a different energetic space and a different partnership with the internal masculine. And so we definitely get into that in the Fully Awakened Woman. I always think that when we start to heal and create space for the power of the feminine, she naturally brings healing and rebalancing to the masculine. So you can head over there. There's a three-day series. You can absolutely dive into all 3 days or one of the days, whichever one speaks to you. You can head over to the akashicwomenschool.com free/gift. And there's actually a beautiful 20-minute radiant Akashic womb awakening and clearing practice. It's so gorgeous. It's about 20 minutes long. I've had really great feedback from it. You can do it once a week. You could work with it for, the next 3 days. And it really drops you in, gets the energy, the stagnation clearing out, and drops you into the beauty of your creative power in a very self-sourced way. So I definitely take advantage of that. And I think those are the two kind of offers that have the most energy around them right now. And again, inviting you into the Fully Awakened Woman, 12 weeks to embody the power of your turned on frequency. I can't wait to dive in. Summer is the most delicious time to be journeying through this container. Come in, experience the magic and the power of your essence. Experience the power of the tools that I use. I weave in a lot of shamanic practices. We work in the Akashic field. I bring in the Akashic records. I weave creativity in. I weave activations, transmissions, movement, conscious breathing. I bring it all in for your embodiment, your liberation, and your power. All right. My name's Tara Preston. I'm sending you so much love, and I shall talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. Hello, friend. Thanks for joining us this week. If you'd like to stay in touch, head on over to the Akashic Women's Community on Facebook group. Come share your takeaways, your insights, your reflections. I would absolutely love to hear. If you'd like to deepen into any part of this work, head on over to the akashicwomenschool.com/free-gift and grab the Akashic Radiant Womb Awakening and Clearing Morning Practice to start to sink into your feminine power.